Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or MOUNJARO? Then join us on The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or MOUNJARO. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 MOUNJARO TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.
Alive on the MOUNJARO, it's on the pen alive, with your host David Knapp.
Thank you, Clap Track, and happy Thursday night. Welcome to On the Pen Live. I am Dave Knapp, man on the MOUNJARO. That's why I'm here. You are on the pen. That's the Ozempic, Wegovy, MOUNJARO, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Zepbound pen. That's why the algorithm has you here tonight, or our friends who are on the pen have drug you into these shenanigans over here on YouTube. If you are new here, put an N in the chat next to your name. Let me know that you're new. I would love to welcome you by name, but I would also love it if you would hit that like button, that little thumbs up button. That really helps people to know that this is a worthwhile endeavor over here at On the Pen. Fridays, I see you. I see you, boy. I see you. The other thing is, we want you to subscribe, right? So hit the subscribe button, because that's going to keep you in touch with our content, and the bell notification over here on TikTok or on YouTube. That's going to be the little alert every time I post a video. Your phone will go boop. There's something you should probably check out from the old man on the MOUNJARO. So the other thing is, there is that little love button down by the chat. There's a little heart. You can smash that little heart button just like you do on TikTok. All these things help YouTube to know that this live stream is worth it. So without any further ado, we've got a great show tonight. We've got Sina Arhem from Join Fridays, who is in the chat. Make sure you give him some love. If you are here to see Fridays, put Fridays in the chat. Put Mr. Fridays in the chat if you are here to see Mr. Fridays tonight. We're so excited to bring you a little interview that we did with Sina, and I'm so excited to share that with you all tonight. We've got a great show, as I said, a couple of things to share with you tonight that I'm excited to bring to you. But you know that we have a rhythm and a routine to this show on the pen. We're going to talk about a little bit of housekeeping to get housekeeping. All right, let's get right into it. So some of the housekeeping for the week. So one of the exciting things that I announced last week that I want to remind you of this week is that all of the gifts that are given on this channel in the month of March 10% of those gifts, as well as 10% of all the paid memberships, both here and on TikTok. 10% of that's all going to be given back by me to one paid member. So if you're a paid member, you in the month of March, you will potentially be somebody who could be gifted 10% of all the gifts that we receive through the month of March. And I think we'll probably keep this trend going. The idea is that we want to help some of you who pay a bunch out of pocket to defray some of the cost of your medicines. So you can join over here, $2.99 a month. The link is in the description of the video. If you're on an Android phone, there should just be something that says join. You can tap that, tap that, tap that. In the description, if you're on an iPhone or a desktop, you should be able to see the place that you can join there. So Michelle with a $19.99 super chat. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. Very, very generous of you. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. So 10% is going to go back to one member this week. And so we've got Allie, who's excited for Fridays. Jen, Nebraska, is excited for Fridays. Lauren is excited for Fridays. You want me full pillow? Yeah, I think I forgot to drop that. So yeah, what kind of hotel is this? So yeah, thank you for the super chat, Michelle. I really, really appreciate that. Some other housekeeping is I'm back on MOUNJARO, right? If you missed this video, right? I did a little video where little Miss MOUNJARO and little Miss Ozempic met me in a little Italian restaurant and we hashed out our differences. If you saw that video and you enjoyed that, let me know in the chat. If you didn't see it, check that one out. That's low key, maybe my favorite video that I've ever done. Just from like a creative content type of thing. So that was my favorite video that I've ever done. If you enjoyed that video, let me know. Aubrey just became a member. Thank you for becoming a member, Aubrey. It's good to have you. Welcome to the club. It's so good to have you as a pen pal over here on YouTube. So that's the housekeeping for the week. Let's keep things rolling. Like this week, we got to talk about some fresh news. So let's talk about what's. Anna loved it. NHL Blues Girl loved it. Carla loved it. Carla loved it just because she got to bust out the Dave is an odd duck emoji, which is Carla's favorite of all the emojis, for sure. And can you blame the gal? What's fresh this week? All right, so this is actually something that I was really excited to bring to you all this week. This was new news to me as of today. So you have been around here for a while, most of you, so you're very familiar with all the pipeline medications that we talk about on this channel, right? And one of our favorite medicines to talk about on this channel is orforglipron. Orforglipron is a phase 3 GLP-1 pill that's in the works from Eli Lilly, and we're super excited about that one because when you think about a GLP-1 pill, think about accessibility, the ease of manufacturing. They're already building the manufacturing facilities to make orforglipron because it's that sure of a deal. Excuse me. I am really excited about orforglipron because it's the first non-peptide GLP-1, which means it doesn't have to be taken with a bunch of rules like Rybelsus does. So Rybelsus has to be on an empty stomach. You can't drink a certain amount of water. You take it a certain time of day. Orforglipron, none of that matters because it's a non-peptide. And so that's what makes orforglipron a particularly exciting molecule from Eli Lilly. Well, check this out. Up until now, I had known it to be the only small molecule in clinical trials, but Terns Pharmaceuticals, T-E-R-N-S, check it out. It's T-E-R-N on the stock market. They're out of Foster City, California. They announced today that in 2024, we are going to get top-line data, right? So we're going to get a readout of their phase 1 trial this year for Turn 7. Excuse me, what is it? Turn 6. Let me just reading through my notes here. I lost it. Sorry. Okay, so I think it's like turn 600 or turn 700. I'll get the exact information linked in the description of this video. But Turn Pharmaceutical has a small molecule GLP-1 in phase 1 clinical trials. And this is really exciting because this could potentially rival orforglipron, and we're going to get top-line data from their phase 1 trial this year. So Turn Pharmaceuticals. This is going to be a fun one to watch. But the news was that they're going to read out the phase 1 study, which is really exciting because we're going to get more data, right? We're going to get some actual data on how beneficial this molecule is. But reading a little bit further, we learned that they not only have a GLP-1 small molecule, but they have a GIP small molecule in development right now as well, that they will be starting a phase 1 trial on as well. So a small molecule GLP-1 that just became that's just finishing phase 1 trial that we're going to get top line data. Natalie, thank you for becoming a member again. I appreciate that. Good to have you. Small molecule GLP-1, small molecule GIP. That is exciting. Terns, T-E-R-N-S Pharmaceutical. And it's just labeled Terns 700 and Turn 800 and Turn 600. So there's 2 GLP-1s and then 1 GIP. So 3 altogether, all small molecule medications, all pills, way down the road, right? We're talking like 2030 before this stuff would, materialize. But exciting nonetheless, because the future, like Sina says, right? The future is bright. One of the things that we say on this channel all the time is that we are just at the advent of these medications. Like we are the pioneers of the GLP-1 community. And I'm just so excited to be able to be one of the people who is bringing you the news on this stuff as it breaks, because it's so exciting. And the future of obesity medicine, I think of the fact that obesity is a chronic disease, but it's also very much genetic, and type 2 diabetes, very much genetic. And I think of the future for obesity medicine and the future of diabetes medicine, and the hope that the next generation behind me, my kids who will be, likely more predispositioned to these things, that they may have treatments available for them should they, and God forbid that they struggle with these same things. But I'm just so excited for the future of these medications, and so thankful for the brains behind these medicines that are getting developed, and for just the bright hope that is the future of GLP-1 medications and beyond. Super, super excited. So that's what's fresh in the world of GLP-1s this week. Let's get into our trashy news for the week, shall we? Let's take out the trash together. So taking out the trash this week, we're going to talk a little bit about the MOUNJARO supply, shall we? Who here in the chat, let me know in the chat if you have struggled to find your MOUNJARO or Zepbound in the last couple of weeks. If you struggled to find your MOUNJARO, put MOUNJARO in the chat. If you struggled to find your Zepbound, put Zepbound in the chat. I'm talking anybody who has struggled to get their medication. If it's been MOUNJARO, put MOUNJARO in the chat, or Zepbound, put Zepbound in the chat. You can put an M or a Z as well. I'm just a little informal poll. Sabrina, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. I appreciate that, my friend. 10% of all the gifts this month going back to one paid member, if you're a paid member on TikTok or YouTube. So we've got a MOUNJARO. We got 2 MOUNJAROs, 2 people on MOUNJARO. So right now, the shortage, MOUNJARO, that's 3 on behalf of Brent's mom. Very, very interesting. This 10 through the 15 milligram dose, Savior MOUNJARO. Good to see you here, Savior. See some new names in here. If you're new here, make sure that you hit that like, that bell, and that sub right below this video, especially the subscription, so that you can stay connected to the content. So MOUNJARO, everybody's answering MOUNJARO. MOUNJARO 10 through the 15 are in an FDA declared shortage. They updated that in February to say as much. They also updated it on March 5th with really no real update. They just said through early March, the 10 through the 15 will be in shortage. So here's the frustrating thing about that, right, is we have yet to see Zepbound hit this shortage list, but we have heard Eli Lilly say things like they expect rolling shortages for the MOUNJARO doses, the various MOUNJARO doses. So I think if you're reading into what they're saying on these interviews, is that we can expect them to alternate the shortages between the lower doses and the upper doses to sort of spread the pain out. But I hear nothing about Zepbound. So it's clear to me that Eli Lilly seems to be prioritizing Zepbound manufacturing over MOUNJARO. So let's speculate as to why that is. Well, two things, right? Zepbound is a more expensive medication for the same exact packaging, the same exact medicine. It just costs more. So they're making more money with it. The second thing is Zepbound is an absolute freight train right now. It is a freight train. They're writing 100,000 scripts a week of Zepbound. Just think about how many people are getting on the system. So what happens if all of a sudden there's an FDA declared shortage of Zepbound? Well, all that good press goes away and potentially slows that freight train, that prescribing freight train down, because what do doctors think? Well, I can put you on this medicine, but I don't want to because you're not going to be able to get it, right? So they want to stay out ahead of that. So I think that the MOUNJARO supply is going to continue to suffer before the Zepbound. Do I think the Zepbound thing will hit shortage? Yes, I've predicted that sometime this year it will hit the shortage. When it does, at some point there is a threshold where it will make sense for MOUNJARO to be released in single dose vials, and I hope that they do it. But if you think about it, it's obvious reasons why they're holding off on that, holding off on doing that. But I'm really, really hoping beyond hope that we see MOUNJARO hit the market to alleviate these MOUNJARO shortages in single dose vials at some point in 2024. That's been my bold prediction here. Let's see if it comes to fruition. So frustrating for those of us who are diabetic and doing the scramble, but thankfully most of us are OG. We've been through this before. We know the tricks. And just to do a little recap on what those tricks are, talk to your doctor about writing 90-day supplies of the medication. For me, at one point last year, I was combining a 5 milligram and a 2.5 milligram to make a 7.5 milligram dose. I did that for 1 month last year. It worked fairly well for me. These are conversations that you can have with your doctor. In addition to doing that, you can call around to multiple pharmacies. We know that sometimes mom and pops are able to get them. We know that oftentimes the PBM pharmacies are able to do that. And we also know that pharmacies that are attached to hospitals can sometimes be a good route to go, as they do keep a little bit extra supply for their patients in the hospital and don't always need the supply that they're sitting on. And in some cases may even want to offload some of the medications that sit in the fridge, because that, is an expensive medicine to carry. So keep that in mind, that there are some tips and tricks we can follow, but thankfully for us OG MOUNJARians, we've been through this. We know the tips and we know the tricks. What do we got? We got H's blowing up in the chat. What are the H's? What are the H's? Put an H in the chat if you daydream about giving Dave a hug. Well, H that all day. Hugs to you all, especially to you, Join Fridays. I see you. I see you, baby. I see you, baby. Tay, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Good to have you here, Tay. Hey, if you are new here, Tay is obviously not new here. One of my moderators over on TikTok. But if you are new here, put an N in the chat next to your name. Let me know that you're new here, and hit that like, hit that bell, hit that sub. If you're new here and you've never been here, you have 3 jobs. Hit the like, hit the bell, hit the sub. That is going to keep you in touch with my content. And we like to bring you some of the most entertaining, we call it edutainment over here. Jay is new. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Is there really 2 J's? Do we have 2 J's right back to back? What are the odds of that? So yeah, Judy's new. Welcome. Good to have you here. Fridays, he's pretty new too. So we've got a great interview here. I'm not going to hold off on it any longer. Really excited to bring this one to you. Anna is using Zepbound due to the MOUNJARO shortage. Some people are doing that too. That's a great point, Anna, is if you do have coverage for obesity medicine, you've been getting MOUNJARO, perhaps having your doctor write a Zepbound script would be a good way to do that. Aubrey with a $9.99 super chat. Thank you. I appreciate that. Very kind. Thank you for the super chats. 10% of all the super chats, 10% of all the memberships are going to go to one paid member. We'll do that on April 4th. April 4th will be the announcement for that. J&J, welcome. That's right. Rudy, how are you tonight? Good to have you. New baby. Welcome, Chris. Good. Glad to have you here. All right. Without further ado, we're going to bring in the interview with none other than, well, first of all, we got to roll the bumper, don't we, Dave? We got to roll the bumper. And is this channel ever hot? I mean, this perhaps the hottest channel. Perhaps the hottest channel. Join Fridays, Mr. Friday himself, the hot channel.
Hot channel. while to do. A friend of mine who I've had the opportunity to get to know a little bit over the last couple of months as we have created content that kind of overlaps over on TikTok, and then sort of exchanging messages and just getting to know him via his awesome content. You may be familiar with him if you're over on TikTok. His name is Sina Arhem, and Sina is known as Mr. Fridays over there. A little bit lesser known maybe over here on YouTube, but we're going to try to change that today as we welcome into the stream here my good friend Sina. Sina, how are you, buddy?
Hey, how's it going? I love that intro.
Welcome to On the Pen.
This is cool. This is a very surreal feeling for me. I'll be honest with you.
Well, this is awesome. I mean, it's been one of my favorite parts of this journey has been getting to know so many people that in no world would our lives have ever crossed paths before, other than making content about GLP-1 medications. And it's just been so cool. Such maybe an unexpected part of this journey is the friendships that I've been able to forge with people along the way. And I definitely count you among them.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree with you more. I just feel like you hit it on the head. I mean, you kind of get what you focus on. And on social media, if you focus on the positive and the good, there has been nothing but just like love. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've known about you for a long time, because I was a creeper on social media, GLP-1 social media, for a very long time. So, that's why I was saying it was surreal to have my intro on the pen, because I feel like I've known you for a while, and it's always been love and positivity. You're one of the initial referrals that I give when a friend of mine or a family member wants to know more. I'm like, you got to listen to the Plus Sides podcast. You got to follow this account on the pen, Dave. And, yeah, man, this is cool to be here.
Awesome. Well, likewise. So we'll get a chance to kind of plug a little bit more of what you're doing. But just for the sake of everybody who's watching right now, what social media platforms are you active on, and what are your handles there?
Yeah, we are active on probably TikTok the most, and then Instagram as well. It's at Join Fridays. And then on TikTok, we also have at Join Fridays Live, which is where I go live kind of all the time. And I just communicate with the community, on a regular basis, at least 4 or 5 times a week. I do all kinds of stuff there. We're building a startup in this space. And so that page has kind of become in a weird way, like the founder's story. I get to communicate and grow there. So yeah, those are the accounts that you should definitely check out. I'd be remiss if I didn't say at Join Fridays DR is one that you should consider. That is our medical director. We're trying to get him up to 1,000 followers so he can start doing some more doc talk with the community. But those are the accounts you definitely want to see.
Awesome. So I think that it's a natural question to ask, Sina. When you started popping up on the screen in my TikTok news feed, and we share, like I said, overlapping content sometimes, like really information focused, right? So, and honestly, I feel this way, the more the merrier. But the first time I saw this beautiful bastard pop up on my newsfeed, I was like, who is this guy? Who's this guy talking about GLP-1s? Help us understand, Sina, where did your passion for what you're doing with Join Fridays come from? And what is sort of your driver behind your efforts to basically just help people?
Ooh, that one's loaded. How much time do you have? Well, how long is this show?
As long as we need.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. Interrupt me at any point, because this is a question that I get asked from time to time when I'm going live. So I don't think you're the first one to kind of have that consideration, like, who are you and why are you here? But I never get it's real. TikTok is a lot more short form, so you don't get really a chance to get into it. So stop me if I'm rambling at any point. But I grew up being touched by the disease of obesity. The matriarch of our family, just kind of like the center point for everything. I mean, any drama, any gathering, it was my grandmother. And so my father's mom, and she has probably had a BMI greater than 45 throughout the entire time that I've been alive. That's the woman that I knew. And we're Persian, so they lived in Iran, and we would go there every single summer for a few months, and they would try to come to the States. But I remember it was always like this conversation that we need to try to get her to the States, get a green card so they can come, so we can get better care and try to get, some solutions, want to try to help her find better health outcomes. And obviously in Iran, things are just really tough. You're not going to get the best access to care. So they ended up finally moving to the States. At a certain point, I was probably maybe 10 to 12 years old somewhere, and living with us. And so from that point, it kind of became a journey to try to get her better care. But throughout this period, it was like, I mean, looking back on it now, you know, it's like, we're going to take grandma to a doctor to try to see if we can help her lose weight, you know, and that was like a very common and central conversation in our family. And looking back on it, the prescription was to eat less and move more the entire time. I mean, from the get-go. As Persians, we eat a lot of carbs, like a lot of rice and bread, you know, simple carbs. And I have so many vivid memories of like them coming back from a doctor and there being like an argument and about like, you have too much rice, you know, and that is the crux of this whole thing, is like, you know. And so then like dinner tables where somebody would come and like scoop a bunch of rice out of her plate and be like, you know, it's because we love you. And like, just knowing what we know now, and quite frankly, what we actually knew then, probably medically, you know, but it was a different time. Shame, you know, shame and blame. And it wasn't fair the whole time, you know. And ultimately, my grandmother developed type 2 diabetes that was very poorly controlled, and heart disease, had multiple surgeries on her heart, and eventually succumbed before she hit her 55th birthday, as a matter of fact. So that was, you know, earth shattering for our family. So I was young, you know, but only now do I realize how formative those experiences were for me. Because when I think about them, they're still so vivid. You know, it's like, I cannot think, I have a very vivid thought of the look on her face as somebody would come over multiple times a week. And like, no matter what portion she had, remove some percentage of that from the plate, you know? And I would see the look on her face, and every single person that was doing that was doing it from a place of love. But that doesn't change, you know, the intentions are pure, but the actions there's no way to paint that, but that would fulfill that individual probably with really negative and feelings of shame and guilt, you know? And so, and then fast forward, right? So, I mean, I'm a science nut, always have been. Later got a degree in biology, and I actually went on to dental school. So I began practicing dentistry in about, you know, 2009. I started and got my license in 2012. And that was, you know, that was what I did. I was a caregiver, you know, I was in the healthcare space, and it was passion. I loved it. You know, I love the ability to directly, like in dentistry, somebody comes in with a problem, and oftentimes it's associated with like pain or discomfort. And not only do I have the knowledge to support what's happening and how to diagnose it, but I actually in real time can perform the procedure before they leave that day. I can improve their outcome immediately. So to me, that was always what drew me to it, is like a very, very tangible, not just like a diagnostician, but a very tangible ability to take somebody from a state of unwell to a state of greater vitality, you know? So that was, I mean, I think I was built for that. It was a passion of mine. And then in 2020, my wife and I had our first child, our only child, and she's had a ton of health conditions. She's, you know, kind of the story. We've talked about it privately, but a very, very, very medically complex situation right from the get-go. So my last almost 4 years now, I would say fatherhood has not been what I had planned for it to be. And I got thrust into, it's a very rare triad of conditions that she has. And so there are not a lot of places or people that can provide support for it. There are not a lot of solutions. It's kind of like on the horizon, the hopes that things will open up in research and things like that, which if you kind of parallel it over to what we do, it's interesting now. But I got thrust pretty much immediately. It was weird because I was a caregiver and a healthcare practitioner and a prescriber, and I had a certain perspective of how and who I was to people, to patients, you know? But then when you immediately, I mean, it was in the matter of like, I was in an instant, it was like we go to the hospital and then 2 days later we're back home, and now like life is different, but not in that traditional way. I became an advocate. I had to become an advocate for my daughter immediately, you know, because she was born April of 2020, right? So like, this is like peak pandemic, right? Yeah. And so immediately we get told that we're, you know, early anxious parents, and that like, this is nothing, and, you know, all that stuff. And my wife is not the type to take that as an answer. And so she was kicking down doors, and she was kicking down doors from day one. I'm more like, let's ask nicely, you know, maybe there's a certain person we have to talk to there, you know, because I was coming to it as like a practitioner, right?
Sure, right.
And I learned fast when you're advocating for someone's health and when you're going to try to get answers and solutions, you kick down doors. You kick down doors. That's the only way to do it. That's the only way you're generally going to be heard, and unfortunately in our system. So became an advocate immediately and essentially had to leave practice overnight. I have not seen a dental patient since the day my daughter was born. I was working 6 days per week until about a week before her birth. Well, 2 weeks before, because it was like, you know, when everything kind of got shut down. And then that was it. Like, I haven't seen a patient since, just because her care is around the clock. It was around the clock since day one, and it's around the clock today. So we spent the last 4 years moving around the country and trying to find care. You know, I'm from California. We were in Texas, then Cali. Now we're in New York, just always chasing care. So I've become an advocate, and I understand advocacy, and I understand the need for advocacy and the necessity that, like, not just my daughter, but patients like my daughter and future patients like my daughter are going to need somebody to be kicking down doors today so that there's a brighter tomorrow, right? And so then comes along my best friend of 25 years, Dr. Weiss Zerkabi. He's the medical director for Fridays. He's a double board certified family medicine and obesity medicine physician. And he, you know, we've been best friends since we were probably 13 years old, you know, and he knew what my life had kind of turned into, and he had seen what it took to build, you know, 35 years or 36 years of that, and just kind of have to like kiss it goodbye overnight. And so he knew I had some particular skills that he would try to be able to lean on. He just came to me and said, hey, this is what I do. You know what I do. You know why I do it. And I know that you have a very personal connection to obesity. And I think that we could try to find a way to support each other. You know, I need help. I don't, you know, there's some elements of trying to build this program that I just don't know how to do. But I know the medicine very well. I know the patient population very well. I serve this population. So we just kind of started, that's kind of where it came from. And it just began to build from there, you know? And so it was interesting because, you know, I was coming from a place of kind of like not having professionally know exactly where my life was going to go, but knowing that I had been a scientist, knowing that I had been a healthcare practitioner, knowing that I had been touched by obesity, knowing that I now had become an advocate, it almost feels like it was faith, you know, like there's just this was like some culmination of like all of these both positive and negative experiences throughout my life came to like a point, and then Dr. Weiss gives me a call, and it just kind of went from there. So
that is awesome. Thank you. Thanks for giving us the story, because I think it's just important to understand. You know, when we get into this, I think there's a lot of conversations that circle around people that are giving information about these medications, and it's like, if you're not a doctor or somebody who's obese, I feel like there's a wall up. And so
Sure.
I feel like it's really helpful context for people to see that, like, you don't have to. And the reason I bring this up is because it's been a debate. It's been a topic of debate within the community for a couple of weeks now. Like, should you have an obesity doctor who has never struggled with weight? Like, is that a prerequisite? And so these conversations are happening. And I think it's important for people to understand that people don't have to have been through the struggle to be able to offer something to the conversation. And obesity is such that there are very few people who haven't been touched by it in some way, even if not directly dealt with chronic obesity. I think some of the most compassionate people that I've come across in this journey are actually people who have never struggled with obesity. So I appreciate the background. And one of the questions that sort of pops up in my mind when you talk about learning how to be this advocate for your daughter, I know that there's probably a part of you that wishes that you would have known what you know now, so that you could have been a better advocate for your grandma. And I think probably you're not alone in that, right? There's probably other people in your family that look at the science now and look at, you know, what you're educating people on and go, I wish I would have known that. If I had known that, I would have never said this, or I would have said that, or, you know, all those things. So what does advocacy and what does kicking doors down look like practically for you in your role with Fridays? What does that actually look like? Or maybe the better question is, what does kicking doors down look like for Fridays? What doors are you kicking down for patients in order to advocate for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it takes a few different forms. For us at the program level, right? So like what the program that we have, we're nationwide telehealth clinic. And so we are providing care, right? But what that looks like in terms of, if you look at it in terms of advocacy, right? I believe access to information and access to care are the biggest elements, right? We now have a chief clinical advisor who's been an obesity physician for 15 years. She is the director of the weight medicine clinic at NYU. Her name is Dr. Holly Lofton. She was a part of the STEP trials. I mean, just an absolute maven and super intelligent woman. And when I first met with her to discuss what Fridays was trying to accomplish, she was kind of vetting me, right? She gets approached all the time for these types of, I told her, we just want somebody who's been deep. I mean, Dr. Weiss is an obesity physician, but it's only been a few years. We want somebody who's been deep in the iterations, right? To understand all the different outcomes. And as she vetted me, her last question was, if you could sum up Fridays in a sentence, in an essence, right? What are you doing? And I said, improving access to care. And she was like, done, I'm in. That's the answer, right? So access to care, I believe, is a form of advocacy, right? Because there are a lot of places in this country where patients, they live in environments where they're not going to have access to information in the appropriate ways. They're not going to have access to the medicine, and they're not going to have access to environments that would promote, potentially more vital outcomes for them health-wise, right? So Dr. Lofton, what she said to me, she's like, there are places in this country, because she practices in Manhattan, and she was like, where I live and where I work, there is no access to care issues for the most part. People in this city, if they know this solution exists, they can usually find a place around any corner they can find it, right? But she was like, there are places in this country where they won't be able to, if they even find out that this solution exists, they won't be able to get a doctor within 1,000 miles that can maybe treat it, right? So I think providing access to care means advocacy means providing access to care. Now, on the flip side, I've built a platform now, right? I have a bit of a voice now in the community, and I don't think that I took that position. I think that I've been given that position by the community. I think I've been given the right, as you said. I'm sure when people saw me pop up, they were like, "Who are you and why?" Right? And I've shown over the time that we've been around that the why is really my why. And I've really shown that through my actions and through how I've been with the community. But now I'm connected with people in the community that are like, hey, like we start discussing, like, how are we really going to improve access to care? Like, we're doing it at the levels that we can in the program, but we're in the grand scheme, we're just cogs in the machine, right? How do we begin to turn the big gears in the machine together, right? So things like the TRO Act, right? So like using my platform to try to improve information about the TRO Act, and not only how are we going to use that act to help, our brothers and sisters on Medicare, but what that actually means for everybody else down the chain, So I think it's like using the platform and your voice, but then also using for us the program and what we can do to improve that access, which is the true advocacy on our part.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. We've talked about this for well over a year on this channel. When it gets into the practicalities of what it means to fight for access, it's a lot of things, right? And one of the things that I try to repeat is that I feel like one of the most underserved populations from the GLP-1 medication standpoint is arguably a population that would benefit would benefit greatly, and that would be the people who fall under the Medicare umbrella, right? And so the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act is something that we need to be loud about, right? I know Kim from the Plus Side, she's always talking about getting loud, and that's something to get loud about, because as we talked about many times on this channel over here on YouTube, is that once the public sector adopts standard of care, the private sector tends to follow. So, you get access to obesity medicine for those who are on Medicare. That would have a large ripple effect throughout all of medicine in this country. So absolutely a great thing to advocate for. What do
And
you
I think to just touch on that,
Yeah.
you know, I think when you're advocating or when you're speaking, it's important to, you know, from a tactical perspective, I think it's important to speak to what's the word I'm looking for? The interests of maybe who you might be communicating with. Now, there are a lot of people on Medicare. Like my primary platform is TikTok. I would say the overwhelming majority of Medicare beneficiaries are not on TikTok, right? So I know when I'm on there, I am obviously advocating to try to improve access for that patient population. But I also understand that the patient population that I'm most in touch with are the patient population who are on commercial insurances under the age of 65. And the overwhelming majority of them do not have access to these medications still, right? So when I talk, I make sure to say that we need to help this group of patients who are essentially, it's almost like discriminatory the way they're not getting access to these medications. It's like, hey, now we know it's a disease. We know that we can prevent the suffering. We can prevent the progression of this. However, no. And so when I'm talking to my TikTok audience, I make sure to also state that it's also in your best interest for this to happen, right? This is, like we said, this is the ripple effect. They will set the standard and the commercial insurances will eventually all follow that suit. So I think it's important because as an advocate, if I'm standing up there and, you know, like even like as a politician, right, when they're standing up there, they know which state they're in and who they're speaking to when they're making a particular point. And so I know if we want to get people to move and get loud, they do need to understand like where their personal benefit could be in that situation, you know? And so I try to make sure that I make that point often, because it could be something that becomes white noise if they hear it too much. That doesn't affect me or doesn't, you know, that's not part of what, you know, my world, but it is.
Absolutely. And for those of us who maybe are fighting that battle from the standpoint of hopefully gaining access across healthcare for all patient populations, you're going to be on Medicare someday too. I'm going to be on Medicare someday too. And everything that we're learning, every piece of information that comes out of these clinical trials just bolsters the fact that GLP-1 treatment and the outcomes for patients with comorbidities is there. I don't know that you can compare anything in medicine to it. And so, you know, you're talking, what do you think? It kind of pops another question in my head. Like, how important do you think things are, like the STEP trial and the FLOW trial for semaglutide with heart disease and kidney failure? How important do you think those are to making that case at the governmental level, to get TROA passed? And
like the Synergy NASH trial, right?
Right.
Like, very important. I mean, if we just look at the FDA indication just this last week, right, for heart disease with semaglutide, I mean, I think what it does is it puts it on certain maps that can no longer be ignored. Not that, you know, you could have chosen to ignore it maybe up until this point, right? But we know that cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of Americans. That is something that's been put on our nightly news every single day for years and years and years and years. So now if you know that you have a solution to solve that, I mean, of course, the indication is for patients that have a history of cardiovascular disease as well as obesity, you know, but I think it's paramount. And I think that's why the content that you and I create does have so much overlap, right? And that's why a lot of my content either opens with or ends with the future is bright. Because I know that what we're in now is absolutely a turning point in healthcare and medicine. But you can have a pivot and a turning point, but you can lose momentum potentially, right? Because again, I think that there are these big gears that need to start turning. Heart disease is a big gear, you know? And so I think that they're very important. And I think that they will begin to, I mean, even for insurances now, like today, right? There are going to be patients that have been denied prior authorizations for this medication for the last several years that are now going to get their PAs approved because of this new indication for Wegovy, right? Which, if you just use that as like a small picture of what we can expect potentially with more of these clinical trials, we start to see more of these outcomes that I think, without being, you know, overly optimistic, I think that these are going to be outcomes that exactly kind of what we already are seeing and expecting and hoping for in most of these cases, you know? So I think it's paramount. I think it's amazingly important. And we're going to, over the next, like, because our group, we do prior authorizations and appeals for our patients. So over the last week, that news breaks. and a bunch of patients who we've been supporting and had denied PAs, then they might be on compound or, other solutions. Now they're like pouring back in and saying, can we do another appeal? Yes, this is the time to do it, right? So we're going to start gathering a lot more data on our side as well to understand, it's a cat and mouse game, right? What are we dealing with now that this indication is here? Now I have a patient who was denied for these reasons. I'm going to resubmit with completely new reasons. Is the answer still going to be no here? Because, it's a very exciting time, but quite frankly, as we operate a business, it's a very turbulent time because it's this constant game of like almost double dutch where you're just kind of playing back and forth and trying to find the perfect way to eke in and try to get your patient care,
Yeah, it's operating within the system has got to be, in order to get patients access who need the medication, has got to be not the most enjoyable part of the job for clinicians and providers, but it is a ever more important role. You are the patient advocate between care and hope and the PBMs who are constantly trying to avoid covering these medications for people. And so as I see it, one of the biggest roles for a good provider and a good platform that's providing access to people who need it is to be that advocate in that role and be willing to do the hard, yucky, tedious, difficult by design job of getting people these medications. Because I know that even in my own experience, the third degree that I've had from doctors about having to get my prior authorizations done, it wasn't until I started, obviously I get my care from Flex, but it wasn't until I started working with them that it didn't feel like I was creating a job for them. And it's like, if I could advocate for myself on that level, I would, but I can't. You're the provider, you're the prescriber. And so it's not the most glamorous gig, but to find telehealth companies, telemedicine companies that are really willing to fight that battle for you is so critical, because it's going to get harder and harder as these, at least in the near term, while there's really no competition to semaglutide or tirzepatide, they're going to look for more and more ways to block access. I was reading an article this past week about Cigna, and they came out with an article that they were pushing their narrative through the media about how they were expanding employer access to GLP-1s. But yeah, they're going to end up tying this all to a health program that if you don't jump exactly through their hoops in just the right way, they're going to block access to you.
Yep.
And I think, and a lot of that is still this eat less, move more mentality of, like that's the be all end all for people. And that's, I know that this is the part where it probably is harder for somebody who hasn't struggled with obesity, but that's what I've done for 20 years. 20 years of failing at that advice is exactly why I do need access to this medicine. And so then to be like, eat less, move more, or you don't get this. It's like,
what's crazy about that point, and this is kind of, it's related, but in a way unrelated, but it's interesting because it kind of shows us the framework of this infrastructure around this. If we want to run an ad on social media right now for our company, our patients are literally like, for the first time in their life, are able to stop gaining weight and lose weight with normal efforts, no suffering necessary, right?
Right.
And that is the advertisement. That is literally what this is. It's like, hey, my life was like this, and now 14 months later, it's like this, and it was just through this use of this medication, right? Let's say that's the simple structure of the ad. They get denied off all platforms. And if you look at the rules for the platform, it states you are not allowed to state that any single solution or medication will help the patient lose weight in the absence of diet and exercise. So they deny it, even though that is and I understand it, because before GLP-1s, that same structure of an ad would be maybe a lie.
You're right.
Where it was like they're painting something as a solution that actually wasn't.
Maybe or definitely.
Yeah, it's like hydroxycut or whatever item you want to
fill
put
in the blank.
Yeah. So I understand why it's there, but it feels like that's another one of those things that needs to like maybe, you know, it speaks to the eat less, move more, the diet culture, the fitness culture, you know, whatever you want to call it, that it doesn't honor the fact that patients that have obesity, they don't need to be told to eat less and move more. Patients that have obesity are more aware of it than you are, advertiser or insurance company, and they have gone through every program under the sun through their entire lives. Right. So they, you know, we just stopped running ads because I don't know what else to tell people, you know, like right. I don't want to put on an ad that says, you know, GLP-1. And also, like, I had a great regimen of where I was going to the gym 6 days a week. It's just disingenuous. It's not us, you know? So, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, man, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I appreciate you giving some of your time to the stream today. I'm going to flash your call outs on the bottom of the screen again. Make sure you give Join Fridays a follow. You know, I always, whenever I'm talking to somebody who's offering telemedicine as a service, I like to hear what your differentiators are. And clearly, you know, advocacy, patient advocacy. And I like what you said about kicking doors down and how that relates to just kind of your own personal journey with the people that you love and learning to advocate, and how that your passion grew out of that and kind of blossomed into this thing called Join Fridays. Is there anything else you want to say before we end it here?
Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, you mentioned like what the differentiator is. I'll tell you what it is for us. It's the stuff that we just mentioned, but we've built this program through the community. And so what we've been able to do is we built a coaching hub, right? So we have movement coaching, we have dietitian that does nutritional coaching, we have mental health counselors that do support groups, that do mental health coaching. I think that we try to provide patients all the resources that they may need now in the future, or just tools to take from. As a member, you just take from what you want. And many patients, to be completely honest, they don't take anything from it. They utilize the medications, but they do pop in from time to time and they need a little extra support, you know? And I think that that's an important part of what we do here is we build a community around this journey for patients, you know? And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. You know, you're a part of my community. We haven't talked about our history. We both come from the Olive Garden. You know, we salute the breadstick gods. We both, right. You know, got our start at Olive Garden. And so, so it just feels great to be connected with you, man. You know, you've become a good friend and a sounding board for me over the last couple of months. And I just appreciate the chat.
Likewise. Absolutely. Yeah. I forgot to mention the shout out to the OG. The running cost of for life. My gosh, that's a whole nother topic we could get into. But yeah, I think that it's super important for people to know, you know, what options are out there if they're struggling with accessibilities. The more I hear from people, the more I feel like primary care doctors, not everyone, but on balance, are sort of missing the ball on this. It's creating a lot of, in a lot of ways, they don't have the capacity to deal with some of these things. And so to have more and more options springing up every day to help increase access to this medications. Of course, that's what we're all about here, is just people getting access to a medicine that can change their life, right? And educating people to know that this is not obesity medicine of 1995. This is next level obesity medicine. This is years and years of research and learning about how the dysregulated hormones that happen to people who are metabolically unwell really contribute to a lifelong chronic disease. And so having advocates in the community are a big deal. And we love giving a voice to those advocates wherever they come from and whatever is driving their advocacy. And so I really appreciate you giving some time today, Sina. And even if you're not using Fridays for your telemedicine, all good content, definitely worth a follow. Are you doing anything on YouTube?
Not yet, but we probably, you know, we're in the middle of this potential situation on TikTok. So, you know, we're probably going to transfer over. So yeah, we do have a page here. It's on YouTube. It's Join Fridays. And if you give it a follow, we'll probably start doing some stuff over there as well. So
sounds good, man. Yeah, we'll do this again. I really appreciate your time today. And yeah, we'll catch up again later. All right, buddy.
All right. Thanks, man.
Right, take care. Sina Arhem, check them out. Join Fridays. You're going to be able to find them over on TikTok. Eventually over here on YouTube. I'm sure they're over on Instagram as well. So make sure you give them a follow. Great advocates, and definitely a posture towards obesity and advocacy that aligns very well with what we've talked about with On the Pen. Of course, we heard from Sina some of the things that we've been talking about for a long, long time here. And so whenever I meet like-minded people who are down for the struggle and down to increase accessibility, increase knowledge and understanding so that we can create more surrogates out there who are correcting disinformation about these medications, who are correcting disinformation about obesity, and doing everything we can to improve accessibility to these medications. That's what we're all about here on the Pen. And thank you to Sina for sharing a little bit of his story today on the channel.
What'd you think? That was pretty awesome, wasn't it? Just such a delight to be able to spend some time with my buddy Sina, sharing about his journey to advocacy and then ultimately to his business. Really appreciate him sharing the personal side of what he is sort of driving what he does with his company, Join Fridays. Make sure that you check them out. We're scrolling across the bottom there, call outs on social media. Make sure that you check them out. Like I said, even if you're not using them for telemedicine, they're just a great follow. They have a great community. Even if you're seeing your PCP to get these medications and you're just looking for good content, they have it in spades. Good dude, good motivator. Didn't you love hearing his story about what the motivating factors behind? You can't help but hear that story about his grandmother and just that old school thinking towards obesity and diabetes and the guilt and the shame that's wrapped up because people have been made to believe that it's been their own doing. And so that really resonates. And then of course, Sina's story didn't go into a whole lot of detail, but the issues that he's faced with his daughter and the advocacy and how he's learned to advocate. So just great advocates they are over at Join Fridays and great people in general. And it was my pleasure to invite Sina on the Pen. I'm glad that he was willing to give some of his time, give him some love in the chat. It's been so good to spend some time with you each week here at On the Pen Live. You are the best part of what we do here at On the Pen with Man on the Mounjaro. While that live stream was going, we got gifts from Aubrey. We got 5 memberships gifted from Sue the Dude. Karen gave a $10 super chat. Jim with a $19.99 super sticker, and Rudy with a $15.99 super chat. Listen, 10% of all those gifts tonight and all the gifts during the month of March are going to go into a pot, and one of the paid members on YouTube or TikTok is going to be gifted that to help pay for their medication, right? That's the spirit of the gifting. So thank you for those who did that tonight. Thank you for those who became members tonight. There were several of you who became members. Really, really appreciate that. The membership side of things is really what makes this all work. I could not justify the time and energy that I put into this, the time away from my family to put into this without providing something back to my family. And you are the ones that help me do it, the members on this channel. If you want to become a member, the link's in the description of this video. Thank you again to Sina. Thank you to those who gave gifts. Thank you to the members of this channel. Thank you for giving me this platform to speak with you every week on the Pen. I have such a blast. One of the things that I look forward to every week is spending the time with you, especially with the members beforehand, getting to know them a little bit more, to share our stories. Until next week, I can't wait to see you next week. Love y'all.